Okay, so hello everybody. My name's James Rawlings. I'm a software engineer at Cloudbees, and I work on the open source project Jenkins X. So hopefully you've heard a little bit about this. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about a bit of the journey. It's been a pretty fast 18 months. I'm going to give a bit of context. We're going to dive into some of the more awesome features that are really changing things. You probably, if you were around with the CDF keynotes yesterday, you heard about Tekton. So really excited to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that as well. We're going to try and do like a 50-50 split between this and fingers crossed a live demo. So we'll go for that. And I think there should be a fair amount of time for questions. There's been tons and tons of questions already. So we'll try and get through, start thinking of them as you're going along. But if we don't get through all of them, or if there's no questions we want to ask afterwards, we'll be at the booth, and there's a bunch of us as well around as well. So come talk, and we can dive into anything deeper as well. Okay, so yes, this is me. I'm James Rawlings. Contrary to any parody Twitter accounts, that is not me. This is definitely me. So ignore anything from Twitter on that. I want to kind of step back to start with and talk about Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is kind of a big deal. Every major software cloud provider has an offering for Kubernetes. Many have a managed offering as well, so they'll manage your clusters as well, like an EKS, AKS, GKE, various other ones as well. It has fast become the de facto implementation for the cloud, which is kind of huge. And what this has really allowed is having this kind of amazing innovation around the amazing open source community, and it's really evolved, having this standardization across all these different cloud providers. And this has really, really helped the innovation to build on top of this as well. So it's a very vibrant, amazing community. So if you're not already involved and not looking at it, then even if you want to get involved, then you can get involved in the open source communities that way. Although it's not all that easy, starting out with Kubernetes can be quite hard, and as for developers, it can be quite daunting. There's a lot of new terminology, a lot of new resources. You might have a deployment or service or replica sets, ingress rules. It's quite overwhelming to start with. Then you might have new CLI commands to run and understand how to actually debug your applications. In fact, how do you even get your application actually built and deployed onto the Kubernetes cluster? Once it's there, how do you even access it? It's a lot of actually putting together that once you get this amazing Kubernetes cluster, there's a lot more for developers need before we can actually start going quickly. So this is where Jenkins X comes into it. This is our shiny new logo as well, by the way. Jenkins X was created by developers that needed to develop on top of Kubernetes. We found that we were doing lots of common things and lots of repeatable tasks, but it was wiring everything together, and it was quite complex. So Jenkins X aim is for developers to be able to onboard and move to the cloud faster, and once there, iterate, keep on improving, faster feedback, automating all the CI/CD, but also empowering developers so they have faster, better control to develop software faster. Just diving into it a little bit more. So, as I mentioned about this developer, it is for developers, a developer experience we're building around. We have been developing more and more features, but it's an open source project, so things you're using, please drop into the community and start bouncing out ideas and working about how we can work together. For example, we have things like preview environments, which we're going to see in the demo, and dev pods, and ways to import and create new applications. It's also not just for Kubernetes as well. So whilst Jenkins X runs on Kubernetes, if you've got traditional libraries, Node.js packages, for example, we will actually still build them on the infrastructure, but then actually, rather than deploying out to Kubernetes, you can upload them to Maven Central, Nexus, NPM, various other places. So, but we are going to be expanding the deployment targets as well. So just wanted to touch on that. I mentioned about creating new applications. So the first time I actually got access to a Kubernetes cluster, I was very excited. There was a Redis example of how to do it, and then I installed the Redis example, and I could see on the cluster, and using the CLI command that I copied and pasted, that my pod was running. I thought, brilliant. But I couldn't access it. there was no way to actually get to it. Then did a bit more reading, and there was needed an Nginx ingress controller. Okay. Then I needed to create some ingress rules as well to be able to access this. And before you know it, there was a day gone before actually I was getting the right annotations and configurations and figuring it all out. So what we're trying to do with Jenkins X is to on-ramp, set everything up for you, automate as much as we possibly can, so that you can just create quick starts. We have a set of curated quick starts, which we're evolving. They're pretty simple, but you can have your own ones as well. But you can also import existing applications as well. We have just a simple command. The way we interact with Jenkins X is using a CLI called JX, funny enough. So a lot of these commands are actually come around, and you start getting very familiar as a developer. You can actually start getting nice, rapid development on your keyboard. Jenkins X, as mentioned, is all about automation. So it's not just about automating CI and CD. We know a lot of people are doing automating CI. We know that there's a lot of attention around CI. It's fairly commoditized around CI. We know that. What we're looking at doing with Jenkins X is actually just empowering those developers to do more than that. It's not just about CI. It's about nice, complex deployments as well, but having that developer experience that you can actually feel, get connected, and then have that rapid development. Okay, has anybody read the Accelerate book? James mentioned it on the keynote yesterday. 1, 2. No, come on, more people. Come on, really? Is that just 3 people? No, nobody else? 4. There we go. There was an omission there. Maybe 1 people here. Everybody in this room really should read the Accelerate book. It's a phenomenal book. We're not just saying this. It is amazing. Well, I'm not standing here saying that Jenkins X is an implementation of that book. That is not what we're saying at all. What we're doing is, based on the research from the State of DevOps reports and the amazing researchers that they did, we're taking as many capabilities and the recommendations that they make in the book, and we're adopting them, whether that's trunk-based development or automating CI/CD, various other things. But there is a huge number of other capabilities and learnings in that book that we all as developers can actually learn from, the way we work, the way we interact with our teams as well. So really, hopefully I've encouraged people to read that as well. Okay, so Jenkins X is building on the successes of the amazing open source project Jenkins. We talked about empowering developers. That's what Jenkins has always done. Allow developers to go faster, having greater control. Now, as we move to the cloud and new technologies and methodologies and new programming approaches, new architectures are actually introduced, and a lot of this has happened over recent years, we can actually start to use more from the cloud, for example, or more microservices architectures, for example. So one of these is we have extended Kubernetes in the way it's to be extended using custom resources. You don't really have to know too much about that at the moment, but as you get more into Kubernetes, they're very, very powerful. But we have a concept of environments. For developers, this is a fairly common thing that you want to have create some software, and you want to actually deploy it into maybe a staging area, somewhere that actually replicates your production environment, have maybe some kind of distinction between the two. So developers are fairly familiar with this. We have out of the box, say, staging and a production environment. These are all customizable as well. We also have this concept of preview environments. So another thing that the Accelerate book says to us is we want to be doing this shift left as well. We want to be doing more and more in CI, more automation CI, so that we can have security checks, for example, or greater testing, but also greater collaboration. So when you merge that change into your master branch, you're pretty damn sure that that can actually continue on and go further and be rolled out. Because as soon as other people start merging changes into your master branch, into your master trunk branch, then it's really, really hard to start unwinding those. So you really want to keep your master branch golden at all times. So with preview environments, when we raise a pull request, that will actually trigger a CI build, run our CI tests. Once all those pass, it'll actually build that application. It'll actually create dynamically a preview environment and deploy that application, the proposed changes, into your preview environment, so you can go and see and run automated testing. You can collaborate with UX designers or PMs or anybody that was actually involved in making the decision to taking that change and making it live. So we're really having this shift left, and we can actually encourage greater collaboration there as well. we have a new extensibility model. So again, the Jenkins project was just a superbly amazing open source project and huge adoption. I think Kosuke said there was like 1,600 plugins out there, which is truly amazing. One of the other struggles with this, though, is you could install a large number of plugins into your Jenkins server, which then incurs large JVM costs as well. And when you're talking about the cloud, it's quite common to have a 4, 6, 10 gigabyte JVM running on Jenkins Master, tons of plugins running in, which is always running on the cloud, not even when you actually have any builds actually being performed. And this is costing you money. So we have this new extensibility model where adopting practices like microservices, having independent release cycles, we can actually install apps, and this is like the plugin model in itself. So rather than installing into a monolith, we can actually install into and run as microservices within Kubernetes. And really this is what I'm very, very excited about, as you can probably tell. Pluggable pipeline execution engines. So when we started this out, we were using Jenkins, funnily enough, as you would. Now, we were heavily using Kubernetes. We're developing Kubernetes. We're running hundreds and hundreds of jobs builds a day. We were starting to run into some issues, some challenges. Jenkins wasn't designed for Kubernetes. So we know that we could actually, as we were building out a cloud-native story and we want to evolve Jenkins X into be something to grow with the times, we knew we had to look at how we can actually improve and have a cloud-native pipeline execution engine. Luckily enough, pretty much we had some big discussions, and you can imagine it was, they're tough discussions to have. At a similar time, there was a project being open source called, at the time it's called Knative Build, but actually evolved into Tekton. This is a cloud-native pipeline execution engine using specifications. It was talked a bit by Tara yesterday at the keynote, the CDF keynote. It's an amazing open source community as well. I'd encourage anybody to go and have a look. They're really, really welcoming, really, really friendly, just as the Jenkins X is as well. So I'd go and have a little look and if you want to find out more there. I think there's some Tekton talks as well. I think Andrew Bayer's got a talk as well, which is about Jenkins X and Tekton as well. Okay, just a high-level TLDR about Tekton. We've talked about, it's a specification, but using CRDs. It has a number of CRDs. We have pipeline run, a task run, which are the runnable aspects of this. And then we have a pipeline, a task, and a pipeline resource. So these are 5 custom resources that get installed into the Jenkins X. We have a little tiny Golang controller. This is what we use in Kubernetes. That's actually watching for events when these get created, these custom resources. So when it sees a pipeline run, this pipeline controller from Tekton will actually perform and execute the build from the steps in your pipeline. So it's a declarative API. It's all decoupled, so you can run the individual steps as well. And this is the kicker. There's no JVM. There's no JVM. There is no JVM. I had to say it 3 times because it's truly amazing. So there we go. I mean, I'm a Java developer. I come from a Java developer background, but we are evolving, and where that's suited, we want to be using the best from the cloud. And we were running into quite a few problems without memories, exceptions, and various other things. And now that we're running individual just steps in a Docker container inside a pod, it's a lot more management resource friendly. Okay. So just a little slide on what we're actually talking about here. We have something called a Jenkins X YAML. Now this is it's again a declarative YAML which Jenkins users will be familiar with. It's not an exact version of the Jenkins declarative pipeline. We have, again, Andrew Bayer and the pipeline team are actually been working on this. It's to have familiarity, so you will be familiar with. But as you start using it, and we'll see in the demo, hopefully, you can see that it's a lot more usable as well. And what this does is, in Jenkins X, when we detect that a build has a Jenkins X YAML, we actually generate these custom resources from Tekton. So when these are generated, our Tekton controller is then watching, sees them, and processes that build. Then we report the statuses back. So this is how we're actually working. We're decoupling from the Jenkins X YAML, having that nice familiar syntax for all the Jenkins users, and it's a lot simpler for Tekton users as well. Now, this is a bit of a busy diagram. You don't really necessarily have to know all of this. What we're trying to do is just explain that this is a new, modern, cloud-native architecture that we've built out here. We are embracing the cloud, trying to do the cloud well. We use cloud storage for anything that's needing persistence. We want to use as much as possible different open source projects. We've got Vault in there. We're talking about Prow. Prow is a Git webhook event handler. We're looking to maybe do something around another project called Lighthouse for that as well, to be able to support different Git providers, because at the moment that's just for GitHub. But we are really, really trying to have this nice microservices, event-driven architectures, which is actually ready for the next 15 years as well. So we have down here as well JX controllers. This is the thing. Kubernetes has this concept of controller, and it's just almost like an event bus in a way. You can actually just watch. You can subscribe and watch the API server for events for these for when custom resources are created or updated. Okay. I don't have much time, so might have rushed that, but that's okay. Oh no, we're good. So really, just to go back and just cover that off again. When we started this 18 months ago, 19 months ago, we were Jenkins users. We love Jenkins. We started with static Jenkins, and where we were using heavy development of lots and lots of builds on Kubernetes, we were looking at how we can try and make this a little bit more cloud native. We looked at a project called Prow. They actually created Prow. It comes from the testing SIG from Kubernetes. Every single Kubernetes repo uses Prow to enable chat ops, so you can actually have greater control over CI. We're going to see that in the demo. It means you can actually write comments into your pull request, which instructs behavior actually with your builds. That's really, really amazing from a developer's point of view as well, because you're enabling chat ops for developers on your pipelines, which is really quite handy. We did try using this idea of one-shot Jenkins servers. So this is the idea of actually, rather than having a static Jenkins running all the time and costing us cloud resources, let's actually use an ephemeral Jenkins. So actually, when we get the Jenkins file, actually start up a one-shot ephemeral Jenkins, and then add in the Jenkins file, and then it'll process it and then throw it away afterwards. We take out any artifacts or anything we need and put them into cloud storage. The problem with that was it was still a JVM. We're still running into problems. Now, I'm not trying to beat it up on the JVM here. I don't want to offend anybody at all. But what we're saying is from what our usage, what we use in high demands and lots of builds, high memory, we were running into problems. And that's where then the Tekton pipeline came along, and we loved that community. We're very, very close to them, and I know a lot of other people, a lot of other vendors are as well, that are building out solutions on this. And open source projects, I should say. So then at the start of the year, we then went with the Jenkins X YAML, and we haven't looked back since. We used Jenkins X to build Jenkins X, and the results have been quite astonishing. So I keep saying we need to share actually a number of our builds and how we're actually build times as well. I haven't done that, but I will do it. Okay, so I think we've got about 20 minutes for a live demo. So you're going to help me along, okay, a little bit. That's not with a computer. This is my computer. Don't know where I'm going. That's a great start, isn't it? All right, then. Okay, here we go. So if you can't see it at the back, shout. Hopefully we've got it right. But I have, just to gauge it, people familiar with Kubernetes? Wow. Okay, yeah, awesome. That is awesome. I'm actually blown away by that. Yes. Okay, so I've aliased, for anybody that's not, the way to interact with Kubernetes is using a CLI called kubectl, or kubectl, some people call it. Kubectl, get nodes. Now, I've got a Kubernetes cluster that's been created on Google Container Engine. Google Container Engine is a lovely place to be able to work with. Other ones as well. Jenkins X works with EKS and AKS as well. preference in GKE is just what I'm familiar and used to. So we've got a 3-node cluster, which was created 2 days ago. This was actually created with Jenkins X itself. JX create cluster, GKE, and then we use something called JX boot. Me and James Strachan, I think we're doing a talk, a bit of an impromptu talk tomorrow, where we're going to actually dive into JX boot as well. We're going to try and do some live demos to do with Let's Encrypt as well. So if you want to know a little bit more about JX boot, but for now, we're going to kind of step away. We created the cluster with JX, and we've installed Jenkins X with JX boot. We now have everything we need to be able to build and develop on top of Kubernetes. So I've aliased kubectl with KC, so let's KC get deployments. We're not hiding anything with Jenkins X. We have our JX CLI, which is familiar with developers. But as people start to get more familiar with different concepts and different uses of Kubernetes, then everything still works. You can start finding out more and learning more that way. So we're really just trying to bootstrap people onto there and provide a layer of developer experience. I think, how many times have I said developer experience? It's developer experience. We'll be paying fines soon. Okay, so this is what's installed by default. We can see we've got a couple of controllers here. These are small Golang controllers. They're using like 50, 60 meg, which is pretty awesome. We've got a Nexus. We don't need a Nexus for what we're doing here, but if you have Java or NPM, various other repositories as well, you might have a Nexus. You might have it outside of Kubernetes as well, but it's all configurable. But we could probably scale that down or remove that. We've got a bunch of other things. This is from Prowl, so we've got Cryer, Deck, Hook. I've never pronounced that one. Sinker. They're actually got to have the award for the most nautical-themed components, I think. We are looking at, we love what they've done here. It's very tied to the Kubernetes project. We are looking at reusing parts as much as possible, but kind of condensing this into maybe one pod as well, making it a little bit more, highly available actually, but making it a bit less resource intense because obviously we don't want things running all the time. So we've got Jenkins X installed. What we're going to do is, let's go into my workspace. Let's create a quick start. JX create quick start. Okay. So we have a number of, it's just a GitHub organization of different of quick starts that we have, various different languages, and which organization. So, well, let me skip, let me read what I'm seeing in front of me. When we create a quick start, rather than import, we actually will create a Git repository, and we'll actually create that repository in GitHub. We'll set up all the webhooks and the permissions as well. So we actually then we'll enrich that quick start with everything that's needed to be able to build and package and deploy that application on Kubernetes. So we're going to put it into a shared organization. Let's call it Cloudbees kubectl. Let's call this, I can never think of names. Sanford's SFO, Jenkins World, no, DevOps World, Jenkins World. So we've created a repository. Now we can get to pick one of our quick starts. So we've got Android here, ASP.NET. We've got DLang, Golang, Node.js. Let's go Node.js. It's nice and quick as well. We're going to create a Node.js application. Initialize with Git yes. Initial import commit message. Just enter the defaults. Okay. What we can see here is we're actually we've detected that it's Node.js, and we've actually added a Docker file, a Jenkins X.yaml file, also added a Helm chart. So the folks that put their hands around Kubernetes, you'll be familiar with Helm. We can actually go and have a look at it. It's created our repo. Let's go and have a look at it here, somewhere here. This is 30 seconds ago. We can see that we've got our very, very simple index.yaml. We're going to change this in a bit. There's our Docker file. That's fairly standard. One of the other things then, we've added in the Helm chart for this. So when you get started, as developers get started with Jenkins, with Kubernetes, it can be quite overwhelming, the amount of YAML you have to work with. What Helm is really good at is this templating approach. So, but you still have to create these templates in the first start. So what Jenkins X is doing is actually just bootstrapping your application again and generating all of this, checking it into your repository, which you can go and then tinker with and change things. But the cool thing is you've got CI/CD already set up for you. So when you change things and do something wrong as you're learning, you'll have CI to tell you that you've done something. So you can imagine all this YAML. These are things you kind of have to learn, the concepts you have to learn early on, and it can be quite overwhelming. Yeah. All right. So what that actually did, let's go and have a look at the settings, I think. Webhooks. Okay, we've got a webhook set up there, and that's for our cluster that we've got. Now, hopefully we haven't gone too fast. Because we've just created our application, that's actually triggered an initial build. And we can see that's actually these are the activities from that pipeline. These are the individual steps that are actually happening for that pipeline. We can go and have a little look at it, a closer look at it in a second. And what it's going to do is created a pull request for our staging environment. Remember, we were saying about different environments. We have a Git repository for every single environment that we have. What that means is we can have full traceability. Any change that needs to go into that staging or production environment has to go via a Git repository and have approval, and you have that traceability. So that's kind of handy. That's what's happened. We've got a pull request to our staging environment. What we can actually look at is go JX get environment. Let's have a look. Let's try and sort that padding out. Oh. Sorry, I'll increase it again. Second. We should choose shorter names. So we see we've got a development, a staging, and a production environment. We're actually going to promote automatically to our staging environment. So that's why we saw a pull request be raised, and that'll actually be merged. So that'll actually be deployed into our staging environment very shortly. We can go and have a look at the Git repository. And we can see 1 minute ago, this was automatically merged. A change, which via pull request was merged to add our application, the San Francisco DevOps World Jenkins World application at version 001. Let's switch back and have a look at our application. And we can see, using semantic versioning, we have 001 here, and that's tagged our repo as well. So every change, every merge to master creates a tag, a new release, and actually will automatically deploy out to our staging environment. Again, that's kind of, you may not want to automatically deploy to staging, but we kind of try to encourage people to do that. We don't want to be doing new things in a staging environment that you can't do in the pull request for a change. Again, coming back to, if somebody else comes and merges a change and there's a problem with your change, they start to get very annoyed if we have to start blocking releases because we have to unwind commits and everything and retest. Okay, so let's go and have a look at our application. Let's have a look. Well, I'm not going to show that yet. We've got our application. Now, we have this Jenkins X YAML. Now, to start with, it's not that busy, right? This is just inheriting from a build pack called JavaScript. You can have your own build packs as well. In Jenkins terms, I suppose it's similar to like a shared pipeline library, but it's essentially managed way, but not groovy. And it's more maintainable, and it's more manageable as well. Now, you don't have to use these build packs. It's just a way to get you bootstrapped. And what that's done, that build pack corresponds to a GitHub repository, which you'd have your own ones if you wanted, and you have a JavaScript one here. Now, let's run this pipeline. We don't have to dive too much into this, but here you can see we've done a release, it's done the Docker builds, and then it's promoted through to our staging environment. So these are just these steps that are being performed for our release. Now let's go and have a look at Goland. Anytime, hopefully. I want to sit down. There we go, phew. Let's go open, oops, sorry, open. go to my workspace. I'm going to go down to, what was it called? Jenkins World, I can't remember. SFO. Is it SFO? SFO Jenkins World, okay. So this is our Node.js application. Again, could have been Golang or any of the others we have there. We're going to go and change this. Actually, let's create a new branch before we do that. SFO Jenkins World. Git checkout -b work in progress, because we're going to be good developers. We're going to work on a branch, and we're going to propose a pull request onto our master branch so that we trigger our CI. So on our work in progress branch, now we're going to go hello. Oop. Oh, yes, oh, no. Hello, San Francisco from Jenkins X. We're going to save that. We're going to look at our Jenkins X YAML now. Now, this is our build pack. We could say none, and we could hack our own. Oh, the font. Well done. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. There we go. Better? Yep. So this is our build pack. We could say none, and we could hack out our pipeline in here, and just each individual repo have their own pipeline. It's one of these trade-offs. Do we have a centralized place to manage pipelines, or do you want to have individual repos that have them? What's kind of cool, though, you can still have a centralized place, but then start to override steps and inject steps as well. But the kicker, we have code completion now. So we have code completion in IDE that we can actually start to add things. Okay, let's add to our pipelines. When we do a pull request, we're going to have a pre-build step of, what are we going to do? Steps, step, image. Oh, sorry. We're going to do busybox, and we're going to run a command of echo, and we're going to do an arg of XXX, just so that we can see it in our logs. So if we commit that change, remember we're committing our index page change, improve welcome message. Oh, come on, James, type. Now we're going to push this to our work in progress branch. Which we can go and see. Okay, there's our work in progress branch. And now we can compare that and make a pull request onto our master branch. A lot of people will fork an upstream repo or your internal ones and make a pull request back onto those repos as well. So it's a fairly common approach. So create, let's check, review it. Okay, there's our welcome message, and there's our extra pre-step that we're going to go and check in the logs to check that actually runs before it actually runs the pipeline from the build pack. Create a pull request. Now, what this is going to do now as well, and this is really going to be very powerful for developers, and this is what the Kubernetes ecosystem is using as well. We should have a bot that's going to come back. Oh, there we go. Its bot has come back and said this is not being approved because we want to be able to approve this before it gets merged. It's had a little analyze. There's some plugins that Pro has to say it's a small change. It helps assign people to go and review that. And we can see our promotion build, sorry, I should say CI build is running. So that's running there. Oh, let's go and have a look at the logs quickly. JX get build logs, remembering that our interaction is via the CLI here. And we can see this is our PR build here. Let's go and have a look at that. And these are all the individual containers that are running as the steps from that pipeline. So rather than having them one big monolith Docker image that's actually running with your pipeline that typically you have with Jenkins and the Kubernetes plugin, we have a pipeline that's defining different steps, and each step can be a different image as well. So this pod contains multiple containers that contain different build tools. And here we can see, before the actual build started, this is just cloning the repo, it actually added in our our logging for our echo command that we added in. Again, this is just an example. This can be anything you want. If you want to do checks, for example, who actually made this, or I don't know. I'm sure lots of places have, lots of organizations have lots of things they want to be doing in different stages and different parts. But this gives us the ability to be able to override and inject steps from our shared build packs. All right, and once that's gone and done, as you can see, it's actually gone and done a build. We are using Canico, so we do nice. We're not mounting Docker sockets into the pods, because that's kind of not very secure. So Canico then does a nice safe build and pushes this up to our GCR registry. We then, using the Helm chart from our repo, package up that application, and we then create a preview environment. There's a namespace in Kubernetes, and we deploy that. So we can see, if we go JX get, oh, actually, just have a look back here. We've had a comment saying our PR has been built and now available in a preview environment. So we're going to go and see. I didn't show the staging environment before. Here we go, a bit squashed, but this is our proposed change on a pull request that's been deployed into dynamically. And like I said before, like that Redis example, it's all been exposed. So we can actually access this directly, We don't have to do anything else. As I said, again, we'll do something tomorrow, hopefully, fingers crossed, around how to make this automated TLS as well. So that's another thing that people look out for as well. How much time's left? Maybe leave a few minutes. One thing we probably wanted to show quickly, we're looking at doing, this is a UI that we are looking to put out soon. It's probably going to be in alpha very, very, very soon, and we're going to be looking for feedback. We can see that we've got our project here. We can see, okay, that was our initial master build that actually deployed out to our staging environment. And these are just the logs that we've got. We can see our PR build, and we can check in here. Oh, the job, but I haven't configured any long-term storage, but see all the steps. And then we can go and see, say, our I think I've got some other ones actually running, but this is our SFO Jenkins World Delts World. This build was succeeded, and that application of 001 is running in the staging environment there, which you should be able to go and see, I'd have thought. Let's see if we can see that. View application. So there we go. That's in our staging environment, hello node from Jenkins X, and this one here is in our preview environment, hello SFO node from Jenkins X. So then you go ahead then and maybe collaborate on that pull request. Then you do a /approve, and maybe have multiple people that need to approve different automated tests, for example. When you're ready, that gets merged, and then the whole cycle then goes forward again. I know there's going to be a gazillion things I've forgotten to say, but I think that's pretty much, there's quite a lot of information I've said there. That's the preview environments. We showed staging environments. We showed a little glimpse of the UI. There's going to be more on that. Just to show what we actually did there, though, we'd already created a cluster with JX create cluster. We'd installed with JX boots. You didn't see that, but we can show that tomorrow. Then we ran one command, JX create quick start. We just entered a few times, and that created us our new repo, generated our Helm chart, our Jenkins file, our Docker file as well, and then built and packaged and deployed that with automated CI/CD with environments. So we're not stopping there. We have other features as well, but that's probably, given the time and how much you've probably just sat there gracefully and consumed that torrent of information. But yeah, we're around for the rest of the day and tomorrow as well. But maybe be worth, I think there was a couple of slides, but worth opening up to some questions. Any questions? Yes, hello. Hey. Cheers. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, great questions. The question is, how are the environments separated in the Kubernetes cluster? So we use namespaces. So each environment has a different namespace. We've been doing something a bit experimental about having multi-cluster support. So lots of people might want a production cluster, which is separate from where you're running your builds. We have something called an environment controller that you can actually deploy into your other separate production cluster, so you don't have all of the development tools running in there. You'll probably be a lot more locked down. Yes. Sorry, yeah, the Jenkins X. Yeah, so these are features supported by Jenkins X. Was the question? Yes, they are supported by Jenkins X. Hey.
So you talked about saving money, etc., by not having the JVM running, etc.
Yes.
All the rest of the demo is great. But the question I have is, now we've got these preview environments.
Yes.
How do you prevent them from costing you lots of money?
Yeah.
Because if you've got 5 developers and they do 5 pull requests, they may sit there for 25 days.
Yeah.
And it falls through completely.
Yes, no, absolutely. So there's a couple of things. What we do, first of all, get pods. The first thing we do at the moment, we have something called, we have a cron job that's running that checks that if any if any pull requests get closed, then we clean up, we garbage collect the preview environments. One thing that we've added in, but we haven't done here, is embracing the more serverless. So what we want to do is using Knative Serve, for example. So after a certain period of time, if there's no traffic for that preview environment, Knative Serve will automatically auto-scale that down. And then when the developer hits the environment, the URL, it'll spin it back up again. I think that's a great question, but yeah, there's a lot more that we are doing. Our focus is now probably turning more about costs and how we operate and observability. So there is going to be some huge more efforts around that as well. So I think around monitoring, alerting, and understanding what the effects of running everything is as well. There's a question at the back there?
3 questions.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to remember them all. Okay. Tekton, so did everyone hear the question? So, yes? Yeah, okay. So, yes, you can run Tekton without Jenkins X, absolutely. They are, and again, they've got some great documentation on how to do that. You can install that on any Kubernetes cluster. They're probably mainly, there's a lot of Google folks on there, but there's also people from IBM, from Pivotal, and from Red Hat, or well, IBM now. They're all sort of contributing this. So yes, you can run Tekton on your own. You don't need Jenkins X for that. Jenkins X is just using that as one of its as a pipeline implementation. The main interaction with Jenkins X is the JX CLI, which is written in Go. Everything we do, we want to write in Go. It is a cloud-friendly. We believe there's a lot of, as an open source project as well, we want to attract contributors, and a lot of people, in this space for Kubernetes and Docker and various other things are using Go. And I've forgotten the third one. Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, no, that's a really good one. That was something we added probably fairly recent in the last few months. It might be configurable, that's why that one disappeared. But we use cloud storage. So when the pods get recycled, pods get cleaned up, because initially we can tail the logs of the pod to get the logs of the build, but they don't last around forever once that build's finished. But what we have is we actually siphon that off into cloud storage, and the same JX get build logs will work with cloud storage as well.
How can I compare like the history of a successful or unsuccessful build for a project?
Yeah, comparing the different trends. Yes, so that's something, we had that, but we haven't, it was more, we kind of took it out because we wanted a bit more time to do more with it. What we have, all of our, I did something called pipeline activities. So in here, if I do kc get pipeline activity. Now, this isn't a Kubernetes thing. This is a Jenkins X thing. What we did is, this is a custom resource that we write into Kubernetes, so it's all highly available using the registry of etcd. Let's have a look at this one here. -o YAML. This is all of the activities that happened, or let me do it this way. Yes, this is all the activities that happened with that build. So all the stages, the completion times, the statuses of everything. So the experimental thing that we did last year was just have a little controller, which we've still got, we're just not using, that would just pump all this information into Elasticsearch and had some nice Kibana dashboards. If that's something, I think we were just focusing on right features, but it sounds like something we should be maybe add back in. Yeah. Well, maybe, yeah, that would be good. In fact, that's not a bad idea. Alright, it's an issue. Tekton also provides a dashboard, yes. There's no reason why not. I haven't tried it, but presumably it just used. In fact, I'm pretty sure Andrew Roberts was demoed it. I think there was maybe some restrictions. I don't know. I don't want to say 100%. But assuming they use custom resources, then all the custom resources are all there for Tekton. So you would think so, I think. But I don't know for sure. But something we can follow up with, and probably a great question for either us or ask on Slack. We actually have the best way to get a hold of us is there's a Slack channel on the Kubernetes Slack team, Jenkins X dev and Jenkins X user. I think there's like 1,700 users on there at the moment. There's the dev channel's pretty big as well, so it's a really welcoming thing. But maybe ask us on there. James Rawlings just come out, can ping me, and we'll go and find out. And we'll speak to the Tekton folks as well and understand a bit more. But there's a great collaboration there. There's a question here. Yeah, no, it's a good question. So does Jenkins X work with other cloud providers other than GCP? Yes, it does. Victor and Oscar ran a workshop Monday and Tuesday. They had about 50 people in each, and they had people the choice to run on AKS, EKS, or GKE. The reason we don't talk too much about AKS is because we don't have any automated BDD tests running on every single build for AKS yet, but that is going to happen. We have fantastic Maurizio here, who's from the community. He's not CloudBees. This is a contributed majority of the EKS work as well, and people are heavily using that. So big shout out to Maurizio. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, people are using it. But there is something called the CloudBees distribution, and that's currently initially. It's like a slower cadence every month. That's currently only on GCP, but on the next release, I believe, is scheduled to have EKS. So the idea is to have that good stability covered by automated testing. There's one just behind you there, and I'll come back to you if that's okay.
So, Jenkins X integrates with GitLab the same way as GitHub?
Jenkins X integrates with GitLab the same way as GitHub. So one of the restrictions we have at the moment with using Prow is, because Prow is from the tested SIG of Kubernetes, they're focused on GitHub, right? So what we were looking at doing is trying to contribute the changes needed, but it was quite in depth. So we're experimenting with looking at using parts of Prow, but then adding in multiple Git provider support. And we have a project called Lighthouse, which is real early days, but again, it's open source, but you can go and check it out and speak on Slack. There's a question here, hi.
So Jenkins X on AWS, speaking of other clouds, great work by the way. Really enjoying it. There's one thing though, it spins up an external load balancer, and my client, I cannot have an external load balancer, so JX is out.
Right.
Please make it where I can have an internal load balancer. My machines can get out, through VPN.
Yeah. Could that be done? Well, let's do it. We'll do it. Figure out a way. Yeah. Gone via cops, yeah. Okay then. If there's not already an issue, let's have a chat maybe by the booth and let's make sure there's an issue. Get your GitHub tags and we can try and meld a little bit if you fancy it, yeah? Awesome. Another question, hi. Yeah, can Jenkins X be installed in? Yeah, can Jenkins X be installed in an existing cluster? Yes. So we have this JX boot, which you connect to your existing cluster, run JX boot, and it will do the installation. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. There's things. Cheers.